If you truly want to reach a level where losing money becomes optional rather than inevitable, you must first understand a simple truth. The market doesn't hurt you. Your untrained mind does. Every moment in the market offers unlimited freedom, and with that freedom comes unlimited ways to self-inflict damage. The traders who continue to lose are not victims of volatility. They are victims of their own beliefs about what the market should do instead of what it is doing. To never lose money, you don't need a better strategy. You don't need a more accurate indicator. What you need, what is absolutely essential, is a mindset that is completely aligned with the nature of uncertainty, a mindset that allows you to act without fear, without hesitation, and without the emotional baggage of your last trade. The most successful traders don't win because they know what will happen next. They win because it doesn't matter to them what happens next. They have trained themselves to think in probabilities, to detach from outcomes, and to trust their edge, the same way a casino trusts its games. When you reach that point, when you stop needing the market to give you anything, you become immune to the impulses that create unnecessary losses. The path to never losing money begins the moment you accept that every outcome is just one event in a long series, and that your job isn't to control the market, but to control your behavior within it. Do that and you'll step into a world where confidence replaces fear, consistency replaces chaos, and disciplined execution replaces emotional reaction. This is the foundation, this is the work, and this is the most important thing you will ever learn as a trader. Mastery of risk equals mastery of self. It is a statement that seems simple, but within it lies the entire architecture of consistent success in an environment governed by uncertainty. Most people come into trading believing that risk is something they can defeat, evade, outsmart, or predict. They assume they can find a method so accurate, so refined, so perfectly tuned that risk will cease to exist. But risk never disappears. It is woven into every tick, every candle, every movement of the market. The ones who excel are not those who eliminate risk, but those who understand it so deeply that it no longer feels like a threat to their identity or their sense of security. Mastering risk begins with understanding that the market has no power over you. It doesn't know who you are. It doesn't care about your goals, your fears, your dreams, your desperation, or your need for certainty. It does not respond to your hopes for a winning trade or your terror of a losing one. The market simply reflects the collective behavior of millions of participants, each making decisions based on their own beliefs and emotions. You are just one among them. When you attempt to impose your will on this environment, you lose. When you try to turn an uncertain landscape into something predictable or controllable, you create an emotional imbalance that inevitably leads to destructive decisions. This is why mastering risk is not about understanding the market. It is about understanding yourself. Before you can ever hope to act consistently in a probabilistic environment, you have to reach a point where losing a trade doesn't mean losing your sense of identity. If a losing trade makes you feel wrong, inadequate, reckless, or foolish, then risk will always control you. You will always react emotionally, hesitating, rushing, revenge trading, cutting winners early, ignoring stops, or avoiding high-probability opportunities simply because you are afraid of being wrong again. The moment your self-worth becomes entangled with your results, risk becomes a force that dominates your thinking. Mastery of self means disentangling your emotional reactions from the outcome of any single trade. It means stepping into a psychological space where you can accept uncertainty without fear, without resistance, and without the need to be right. Most people cannot do this because they have been conditioned since childhood to equate being wrong with punishment. In school, being wrong means losing points, losing praise, or losing the approval of others. In life, being wrong can lead to embarrassment, failure, or shame. These associations run deep. When a trader sees the market moving against them, that primal conditioning is triggered instantly. The market becomes the teacher holding the red pen, and the trader is the student trying not to fail the test. But trading is not a pass-or-fail environment. It is a probability-based process where right and wrong are irrelevant concepts. A trade with a positive expectancy can lose, and it is still right. A trade with a negative expectancy can win, and it is still wrong. Mastering self means internalizing this truth so completely that your emotional reactions no longer distort your perception of risk. When you understand this at a core level, Losing becomes just another event in a series, no more significant than a coin flip in a long sequence of flips. It carries no emotional weight because it does not define you. Self-mastery also requires the ability to think in probabilities. Thinking in probabilities means you no longer expect or need any single trade to produce a specific outcome. You recognize that anything can happen. You might have a perfect setup with textbook structure, confluence, and alignment, and the market may still go against you. This is not a violation of your edge. It is the nature of randomness. When traders fail to think in probabilities, they take a loss personally. They assume they misread the market, or that the market is unfair, or that they need a new strategy. This creates a cycle of perpetual system hopping and emotional roller coasters. When you think in probabilities, you stop demanding certainty. You no longer need to predict what will happen next. Instead, you focus on managing what you can control: your risk, your position size, your execution, your adherence to your plan. You begin to realize that consistent profitability is not a result of predicting movement, but of consistently executing an edge across a large enough sample size. You trust the process even when the results fluctuate in the short term. Mastering risk also means redefining your relationship with losses. A disciplined trader does not fear losing money, not because they enjoy loss, but because they understand that loss is a cost of doing business. Just as a store owner must buy inventory before selling it, a trader must accept that losses are the inventory cost of trading opportunities. The problem for most traders is not the loss itself, it is the meaning they attach to it. They treat every losing trade as evidence that they are not good enough. This emotional attachment transforms manageable risk into psychological torture. Mastery of self requires emotional neutrality. This does not mean suppressing emotions. Suppression only creates pressure that eventually erupts in impulsive decisions. Instead, it means shifting your beliefs so that the outcomes no longer trigger emotional extremes. When you stop seeing losses as threats to your identity, your mind becomes calm enough to make objective decisions. You can follow your plan not because you force yourself to, but because there is no emotional conflict pulling you away from it. Another part of mastering risk is accepting complete responsibility. Responsibility means acknowledging that every action you take in the market is your choice. The market did not make you move your stop. The market did not force you to add size on a losing trade. The market did not trick you into breaking your rules. Every decision comes from you. Traders who blame the market, the broker, the news, or other traders are giving away their power. When you refuse to take responsibility, you simultaneously refuse the possibility of mastery. Responsibility brings clarity. When you recognize that your results are the outcome of your own behavior, you gain the ability to change that behavior. You focus on correcting your thought patterns, improving your rule following, and observing your emotional triggers. You stop trying to control the market and start controlling yourself. Ultimately, mastery of risk is mastery of surrender. Not surrender to loss, but surrender to uncertainty. Surrender to the reality that you cannot control outcomes. Surrender to the idea that your edge will play out over time, but not in every instance. When you reach this level of acceptance, fear evaporates. The need to predict evaporates. The temptation to interfere with your system evaporates. You trade with clarity, with peace, with discipline, because you are no longer fighting the nature of the environment. The paradox is this: when you no longer fear losing, you stop losing unnecessarily. When you no longer cling to certainty, your execution becomes consistent. When you stop resisting uncertainty, you thrive within it. This is what mastery of self looks like. It is not about becoming emotionally numb, it is about becoming emotionally unburdened. It is not about controlling the market, it is about controlling your reactions to it. It is not about eliminating risk, it is about making risk irrelevant to your sense of identity. When you reach this point, something remarkable happens. Trading becomes effortless. Not because it is easy, but because you are no longer internally conflicted. You are no longer trying to force outcomes. You are no longer fighting your own impulses. You are simply executing your plan with calm assurance, knowing that the long-term probabilities will take care of you as long as you take care of your process. Mastery of risk equals mastery of self, because risk only exists as a psychological experience. Once you master your mind, the external world no longer determines your internal state. The market becomes a neutral playground rather than a battlefield. You become consistent not because the market changes, but because you change. And when you reach that level of mastery, you discover the truth that eludes most traders. You never needed to conquer the market. You only needed to conquer yourself. Losing stops when you stop breaking your own rules. It sounds almost too simple, almost too direct, almost too inconvenient for the ego to accept. Yet this single truth sits at the core of every turning point in a trader's journey, every breakthrough, every shift from chaos to consistency, every movement from frustration to clarity begins the moment you stop violating the standards you claim to set for yourself. The problem is never the market. The market is neutral. The problem is never the strategy. A strategy with even the slightest edge can produce results if applied consistently. The real problem, the only problem, is the internal conflict that drives a trader to betray their own decisions in the heat of the moment. The rules you create are not merely guidelines on paper. They represent the rational, focused version of you. They represent the trader you want to be, the trader who understands the importance of risk management, the trader who analyzes with clarity, the trader who plans with logic, the trader who respects the probabilities rather than battling them. But in the moment of uncertainty, in the moment when the market begins to move against you or tempt you with the illusion of opportunity, that rational version of you begins to fade. Emotions step in, and the rules you wrote for protection suddenly feel like obstacles preventing you from satisfying immediate emotional needs. The truth is that most rule-breaking in trading is not impulsive. It is emotional negotiation. You know the stop loss should not be moved, but you move it because you are trying to negotiate with pain. You know the position size should not be increased mid-trade, but you increase it because you are negotiating with fear or desperation. You know you should not chase a candle after a big move, but you chase it because you are negotiating with the fear of missing out. This negotiation is what causes loss, not the market, not the setup, not the randomness of price movement. The negotiation stems from the belief that breaking your rules just this once might relieve you from discomfort, but trading is not about relief. It is about discipline. It is about executing a long-term edge with unwavering consistency. Every time you break a rule, you deepen the cycle of inconsistency. You reinforce the belief that emotional relief matters more than long-term progress. And when emotions become the authority, your rules become suggestions, and your account becomes collateral damage. Losing stops when you stop breaking your own rules because rules are designed to protect you from the worst parts of your trading psychology. They protect you from fear, greed, revenge, hesitation, impulsiveness, and self-sabotage. They are the barrier between your rational mind and your emotional mind. When you break them, you surrender control to the emotional impulses that want immediate gratification, not long-term success. Consider why rules are difficult to follow in the first place. It is not because they are complicated. Most trading rules are simple. Stick to the stop, follow the plan, size appropriately, wait for confirmation, do not trade out of boredom, do not over-leverage. None of these require advanced intelligence. What they require is emotional strength. The emotional difficulty is where most traders fall apart. The problem is not the rule, it is the internal discomfort that arises when the rule demands patience, discipline, or acceptance of temporary pain. A trader breaks a rule because they want to escape a negative emotion. Fear of loss, fear of missing out, fear of being wrong, fear of letting a profit slip away. They break rules to avoid emotional discomfort. But the irony is that breaking rules creates far more discomfort in the long term. Bigger losses, more regret, less confidence, more emotional instability, and a deeper mistrust in your ability to follow your own plan. Rule breaking is the root cause of psychological damage in trading, and that damage accumulates. When you break your rules, you also break your trust in yourself. Trust is the foundation of discipline. If you cannot rely on yourself to do what you decided beforehand, then every trading decision becomes a gamble, not because of the market's behavior, but because of your unpredictability. The charts can be analyzed, the probabilities can be measured, but you cannot measure yourself when you are inconsistent. You cannot calculate the outcome of a trade when you know you might deviate from the plan at the first sign of discomfort. This creates internal chaos. Chaos distorts perception. Distorted perception leads to more emotional decisions. Emotional decisions lead to inconsistency. Losing stops when rule-breaking stops because consistency is impossible without psychological alignment. The rules exist to create a structure that leads to predictable behavior. Predictable behavior is what allows a probabilistic edge to express itself over time. A strategy is only as strong as its execution. If you execute 30% of your trades according to the plan and 70% emotionally, the results will always be inconsistent, no matter how good the strategy is. The trader who follows their rules with precision can profit with an average system. The trader who breaks their rules will lose with the most sophisticated system. You must also understand that rules are not punishment, they are freedom. They free you from confusion. They free you from indecision. They free you from impulsiveness. They free you from the emotional storms that arise every time you stare at the charts without a plan. They free you from the temptation to prove something to yourself or to the market. They free you from needing to guess. They free you from reacting. They free you from chaos. When you stop breaking your rules, trading becomes simpler, clearer, cleaner. The noise begins to fade. You no longer question every movement. You no longer feel the need to control the market. You no longer chase. You no longer panic. You simply execute. You execute the edge, not the emotion. You take trades not because you want to feel something, but because the setup aligns with your plan. You accept outcomes because you already understand that no single outcome defines your ability. Confidence grows, not the fragile confidence based on winning streaks, but the deep, unshakable confidence built on consistency of behavior. The moment you stop breaking your rules, something shifts internally. You begin to trust yourself, and when you trust yourself, you can operate without fear. You no longer need to micromanage trades. You no longer feel threatened by loss. You no longer obsess over missed opportunities. You no longer feel compelled to force trades. You operate from a place of calm authority, not emotional desperation. This shift in behavior leads to a shift in results. Losses become smaller. Wins become more structured. Drawdowns become manageable. Your equity curve begins to stabilize. You stop giving back weeks of progress in a single emotional decision. You start seeing the market through a lens of clarity because your mind is no longer clouded with guilt, frustration, or regret. Losing stops when you stop breaking your own rules, because rule breaking is the only consistent reason traders lose. Not randomness, not volatility, not news, not manipulation. Rule breaking. The market does not defeat traders. Traders defeat themselves through their inability to maintain discipline under emotional stress. When you finally reach the level where your rules are non-negotiable, you unlock the power of consistency. You align your actions with your intentions. You align your behavior with your goals. You transform trading from a chaotic emotional experience into a structured probabilistic process. This is the moment true growth begins. This is the moment trading becomes sustainable. This is the moment losing shifts from a destructive cycle to a manageable business cost. And this is the moment you step into the identity of a real trader. One who does not need perfection, one who does not need certainty, one who does not need emotional relief from the market, one who is guided by discipline rather than distorted by emotion. Losing stops when you stop breaking your own rules, because at that point, the battle is no longer between you and the market. It is between the emotional version of you and the disciplined version of you. The disciplined version wins not through force, but through clarity, consistency, and alignment. And once that version of you becomes your default identity, the market stops being a threat, stops being a mystery, and stops being a battlefield. At that point, trading becomes exactly what it was meant to be, a probabilistic game executed with emotional neutrality. And the trader who reaches that state no longer worries about losing, because they no longer contribute to their own losses. The edge isn't your strategy, it's your mindset. This idea overturns everything that most traders assume when they enter the market. They believe the Holy Grail lives in a perfect system, the flawless indicator, the secret pattern, the hidden algorithm that will finally allow them to predict the next move with confidence. They dedicate months, even years, searching for the strategy that will erase uncertainty and eliminate pain. But no matter how advanced their system becomes, no matter how detailed their rule book is, no matter how much data they test, they continue to experience the same emotional turmoil, hesitation, fear, overtrading, revenge trading, cutting winners early, holding losers too long, feeling overwhelmed, feeling out of control. The realization eventually emerges, sometimes painfully slowly. The problem has never been the strategy. It has always been the mindset behind the strategy. Your mindset is the lens through which you interpret every tick of price movement. It shapes how you perceive risk, how you handle uncertainty, how you respond to discomfort, and how you behave under pressure. A strategy, no matter how effective in theory, cannot compensate for a mindset that reacts emotionally to the natural randomness of the market. When your mind is not aligned with the reality of trading, even the best strategy will fail, because the execution will be inconsistent, distorted, or sabotaged by your internal conflicts. Most traders misunderstand what an edge truly means. They imagine it as a predictive weapon, something that gives them foresight into what the market will do next. But an edge is nothing more than a statistical advantage that unfolds over a series of trades. It does not guarantee outcomes. It does not eliminate losses. It does not remove uncertainty. An edge simply means that over a large enough sample size, you expect to come out profitable if, and only if, you execute the edge consistently and without interference. The average trader never reaches this consistency because their mindset is at war with the nature of randomness. You can have a strategy with a clear positive expectancy, yet still lose money because your mindset causes you to interfere with its execution. You hesitate on entries that meet all your criteria because fear tells you, what if this one loses? You exit too early because you're protecting yourself from the possibility of watching a winning trade turn into a loser. You hold on to losing trades because hope whispers, maybe it will come back. Maybe you won't have to accept being wrong. These emotional reactions are not flaws in your strategy. They are flaws in your mental framework. When fear, hope, impatience, or refusal to accept uncertainty take control, your edge dissolves instantly. The distinguishing factor between consistent and inconsistent traders is not intelligence, not experience, not even technical skill. It is psychological alignment. It is the ability to operate within the market's uncertainty without letting emotions distort perception or behavior. Most traders are not defeated by the market. They are defeated by the emotional meaning they attach to each trade. They interpret losses as failures, wins as validation, drawdowns as personal threats, and uncertainty as danger. This internal narrative shapes their decisions far more than any rule they write on paper. The truth is that strategies are plentiful. A quick search online will give you thousands of them. Many of them work. But the reason most traders fail isn't because they lack a working system. It's because they lack the mindset required to execute a working system consistently. If you gave a profitable strategy to 100 traders, maybe 5 of them would succeed with it. And not because they understand the strategy better, but because they have the psychological capacity to follow it without emotional disruption. Your mindset becomes your true edge when you learn to think in probabilities instead of predictions. Thinking in probabilities means accepting that any single trade is meaningless in the grand scheme. It means recognizing that your job isn't to be right, it's to follow your plan. It means understanding that losses are not signs of incompetence, but natural fluctuations within a probability-based environment. When you think in probabilities, you detach your identity from outcomes. You no longer seek certainty. You no longer try to avoid discomfort. You no longer attempt to impose your expectations onto the market. You execute because the setup aligns with your rules, not because you feel safe and not because you feel confident, but because you trust the long-term edge. The mindset of a consistent trader is built on acceptance. Acceptance of randomness, acceptance of loss, acceptance of uncertainty, acceptance of imperfection. When you accept these things, you stop fighting the market. You stop fighting yourself. You free your mind from the exhausting need to control what cannot be controlled. This is where true confidence emerges, not the fragile confidence that comes from winning streaks, but the deep confidence that comes from knowing your behavior will remain disciplined regardless of what happens externally. A trader with the right mindset does not chase trades because they understand that missing a trade means nothing in a long series. They do not panic during drawdowns because they trust the statistical edge. They do not force setups because they value quality over action. They do not cling to losers because they accept that losses are part of the process. They do not over-leverage because they do not trade to satisfy emotional needs. They trade to execute a plan. This mental discipline creates consistency, and consistency allows the edge to manifest. Your mindset becomes your edge when you stop needing the market to behave a certain way for you to feel okay. This is the deepest level of psychological mastery. Most traders rely on the market to regulate their emotions. When the market moves in their favor, they feel strong, confident, powerful. When the market moves against them, they feel anxious, insecure, angry. This emotional dependence leads to impulsive reactions. But when you cultivate a mindset that is independent of market outcomes, you become unshakable. You stop reacting to the market and start responding to the plan. The edge isn't your strategy. It's your ability to maintain emotional neutrality in the face of uncertainty. It's your ability to stick to your rules even when every part of you wants to break them. It's your ability to accept losses without emotional resistance. It's your ability to wait patiently for your setup without fear of missing out. It's your ability to see the market objectively instead of through the lens of your hopes and fears. This objectivity is what allows you to execute consistently. Consistent execution is what allows your strategy's edge to play out. A powerful mindset also transforms your relationship with time. Most traders want results quickly. They want the comfort of fast progress, fast wins, fast mastery. This impatience creates pressure, and pressure triggers emotional trading. But the trader with the right mindset understands that consistent profitability is a long-term process. They respect the journey. They allow skills to compound. They do not rush. They evolve gradually but consistently. Patience becomes a competitive advantage. Your mindset shapes not only your execution, but also your interpretation of data. A trader with a fragile mindset will interpret losing streaks as evidence that the strategy no longer works. They will abandon good systems because they cannot handle temporary discomfort. A trader with a strong mindset will interpret losing streaks as statistical inevitability. They will analyze without panic. They will adjust without emotional bias. They will remain objective. This calm objectivity is what allows real refinement to take place. Ultimately, your mindset becomes your edge because it determines your behavior. Your behavior determines your consistency. Consistency determines whether your strategy's probabilities have a chance to unfold. The market does not reward brilliance. It rewards discipline. It rewards emotional neutrality. It rewards those who align with its nature rather than resisting it. You cannot control outcomes, but you can control your actions. You cannot control randomness, but you can control your response to it. You cannot control the market, but you can control yourself. And when you control yourself, you harness the only real edge that exists, the ability to act with clarity, discipline, and consistency under unpredictable conditions. That is what separates the traders who succeed from the ones who endlessly search for the perfect system. A strategy provides structure, but mindset provides execution. Execution is where profits are made. The edge isn't your strategy, it's your mindset. Because once the mind is mastered, any reasonable strategy becomes powerful. But without a disciplined mindset, even the best strategy becomes worthless. In the end, the market is not testing your system, it is testing you. And the moment you develop the mindset capable of passing that test, you will realize that you never needed the perfect strategy. You only needed the right internal foundation to execute whatever strategy you choose with consistency, confidence, and clarity. In the end, trading success has never been about the strategy. It has always been about the trader. When you master your mindset, you transform uncertainty into opportunity, discipline into strength, and consistency into your greatest advantage. The market no longer controls your emotions or decisions, you do. And once your mind aligns with the true nature of trading, every edge you use becomes powerful, every rule becomes effortless to follow, and every outcome becomes just part of a larger profitable journey.